In the dead of night, a frail boy sat by the candle's dim glow, scribbling in his leather-bound diary. His tiny fingers trembled. The words he wrote would never be read in his time. My cough worsens today. The blood comes again. But Father's kingdom must remain in the faith I set for it. He was not merely a boy. He was King Edward VI, the son of the mighty Henry VIII, yet weaker than any peasant boy in his realm. Born amidst blood, dying amidst blood, his life was a silent scream in the cacophony of Tudor power. His mother, Jane Seymour, died months after giving birth to him. Some said he brought England hope. Others whispered he brought England doom. His midwives feared for him, for his first cry was not loud. The royal physician wrote in Latin, "Vita tenuis est." His life is thin. As Edward grew, his bones remained like hollow reeds, easily breaking under the burden of kingship, but his mind was sharper than many men twice his age. At 9, he read Greek theological manuscripts. At 10, he debated Protestant reforms with Archbishop Cranmer, but at 11, he coughed blood for the first time. The court's hidden fear was never spoken aloud. The boy they called England's precious pearl was cracking from within. In his secret diary, found centuries later behind a false panel in Hampton Court, he wrote, "They kneel before me, but their hearts kneel to others. I am but a crown upon a boy's head." His greatest fear was not death. It was insignificance, and history proved his fear true. October 12th, 1537. Hampton Court Palace. A scream pierced the silent dawn of Hampton Court. It was not the scream of a triumphant mother, it was the scream of pain, exhaustion, and death lurking close. Queen Jane Seymour lay pale and trembling upon blood-soaked linen. The midwives exchanged fearful glances as the royal physician whispered hurried Latin prayers under his breath. Domine miserere nobis. For hours she struggled, her body weakened by infection, her face shining with cold sweat. Finally, a faint cry emerged. The child's voice, weak and thin, broke the tension in the chamber. Everyone exhaled. He was alive, but only barely. The midwife whispered to the nurse, "He is too small. See how his chest barely rises." They wrapped him in silken cloth, embroidered with Tudor roses, and presented him to the dying queen. Jane smiled, her eyes glassy with fever, and murmured, "My son, my precious Edward, my little prince." Within days, Jane was dead. Some said it was the childbed fever. Others whispered that fate itself claimed her life in payment for a son. The newborn prince was baptized with grand ceremony in the chapel royal. Trumpets rang, nobles bowed, and choristers sang, Te Deum laudamus. But behind the gold and splendor there was dread. Henry VIII, though triumphant with a male heir at last, paced the halls restlessly. He ordered the best physicians, herbalists, and even astrologers to predict his son's destiny. One astrologer, John Redman, wrote cryptically in his notes, "He is born under Mercury in Scorpio, quick of mind, frail of body. Fire consumes air." The court nurses noticed his constant coughing fits, his refusal to suckle easily, and the blue tinge to his lips when cold winds blew through Hampton Court's draughty chambers. Lady Margaret Bryan, his lady governess, confided secretly to Archbishop Cranmer, "My lord, he is a sweet child, but he is not strong. His bones are delicate as glass. We dare not tell his majesty lest wrath fall upon us for speaking truth." In secret, midwives used ancient herbal treatments banned by the royal physician for being superstitious woman's lore. They brewed teas of ground ivy for lung cleansing, white horehound boiled with honey for cough, red clover blossoms steeped in goat milk to strengthen blood. At night, they burned juniper and mugwort to cleanse evil spirits from the nursery, whispering, "For bone and breath, for marrow and mind, strengthen this child whom kingship binds." But the physicians scoffed at such witches' brews. Instead, they bled him lightly with leeches when fevers rose, believing bad blood must be removed to prevent humoral imbalance. Edward's cries during these bleedings echoed down the stone halls, haunting the servants who passed by. Some whispered, "How can such a frail creature be heir to mighty Henry's throne?" Despite his son's weakness, Henry VIII declared, "This is my prince. England is secured." He showed him to the nobles in the great hall, holding him high with a grin that belied his secret terror, that his line would still end without a living male heir. Each day, he demanded updates. Does he feed? Does he grow? Does he cough? Is his chest clear today? If the physician hesitated, Henry's eyes darkened. One court doctor, Thomas Wendy, wrote, "His Majesty's wrath over the prince's health is a storm no man wishes upon himself." The king ordered tapestries removed to prevent damp air. Fires burned day and night. The child was wrapped in ermine-lined blankets and held away from windows. Outside the palace walls, common folk spoke of omens. A comet streaked across the sky days before his birth. A hawthorn tree near Hampton Court split in half by lightning on his naming day. Astrologers at Cambridge University cast his horoscope, a ruler before manhood ends. A kingdom reformed by a boy king, his life a candle flickering in storm. This prophecy spread in whispers among monks and Catholic loyalists. They mocked the king's miracle heir, certain God would never bless Henry's broken church with lasting peace. By age 3, Edward could read simple Latin prayers. His governess boasted, "He recites the Pater Noster with no error." But as he grew in mind, his body remained thin. He often fell ill with fevers. Winters were the worst. Chronic chest infections plagued him. A court musician, William Byrd, wrote in a letter, "As I played the virginals for him, he coughed so violently I feared he would vomit blood. Yet he smiled, asking me to continue the tune." The boy king was learning early that to be royal meant to hide pain behind smiles. Among the nobles, hushed conversations took place in candle-lit chambers. Lord Russell, "If he dies, the king has no other heir, then the bastard girls remain." Earl of Hertford, "Pray he lives, or England will drown in Catholic blood again." Lady Elizabeth Seymour, "He is a rosebud in frost, beautiful but doomed." Edward was rarely allowed to play with other children due to infection fears. His only companions were tutors, scribes, and occasionally his half-sister Elizabeth. Elizabeth later wrote, "He was so clever, with a memory sharper than mine, but he tired easily and coughed much. He loved riddles, especially theological ones. Years later, a hidden diary page was found, written shakily in early script. I asked God today to make me strong like Father, but I still cough. The nurse says not to cry. I shall be king. Kings do not cry. The nurse rocked him gently, humming an old English lullaby. Sleep, my child, and peace attend thee all through the night. Guardian angels God will send thee all through the night. Edward's thin chest rose and fell with labored breaths. His eyelids fluttered. His small hands clutched the corner of his wool blanket. In sleep, he was neither prince nor frail boy. He was simply a child, dreaming of a world far away from crowns, thrones, and hidden terrors lurking within his blood. The cold February air bit at the gathered nobles and clergy outside Westminster Abbey. Inside, the grand hall was aglow with golden candlelight, banners fluttering, and the scent of incense heavy in the air. A frail boy, no more than 9 years old, knelt before the Archbishop of Canterbury. His chest was thin beneath the rich velvet robes, his pale hands trembling slightly as the crown was lifted and placed upon his head. This was Edward VI, crowned King of England. But in that moment, behind the pageantry, lay a burden far heavier than the golden crown, the weight of a kingdom torn by religion, politics, and uncertainty. The Archbishop intoned prayers in Latin, the choir raised their voices in sacred hymns, and the nobles swore their fealty. Yet, many in the room whispered doubts. How could this fragile child hold power in a land where adults schemed for every scrap? One courtier recalled later. The boy's eyes were bright but scared. He looked more like a scholar than a monarch. Behind the scenes, Duke of Somerset, Edward's uncle, was already preparing to seize control as Lord Protector, a regent ruling in the boy king's name. Centuries later, historians found a secret diary page dated the day after the coronation. Yesterday, the crown felt heavy, not because of its gold, but because of the eyes watching me. I am a king, but I am still a boy. They bow, but I wonder who truly rules. This small but powerful confession revealed Edward's quiet awareness of his fragile position. Edward's uncle, Edward Seymour, Duke of Somerset, quickly consolidated power. As Lord Protector, he controlled the government, making laws and leading armies, all in the king's name. But Somerset's rule was controversial. His lavish spending and military campaigns against Scotland drained the treasury. The young king, though physically weak, wrote stern notes to Somerset ur atamad, jing restraint. In one surviving letter, Dear Uncle, please do not waste the realm's wealth on needless war. Our people suffer. Edward's tutors immersed him in theology, languages, and politics. He learned Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, rare for boys of his age. In his private study, he pored over Protestant writings, shaping his religious views. One tutor, Richard Cox, recalled, Edward was eager, questioning, and deeply pious, but he also struggled with the physical toll his illnesses took. Edward's uncle, Thomas Seymour, Somerset's brother, coveted power and was accused of plotting against the Protector. Despite Edward's affection for Thomas, Somerset imprisoned and executed him for treason. This devastated the boy king, who later scribbled in his diary, My heart is torn. Though he was a traitor, he was my uncle and friend. Why must kingship demand such cruelty? Under Somerset's guidance, but inspired by Edward's own beliefs, the English Reformation accelerated. The Book of Common Prayer was introduced, and Protestantism gained ground, but Edward privately struggled. In hidden prayers he wrote, "Lord, guide my heart through the storm of faith and crown, that I may lead thy flock." Behind the throne, nobles jockeyed for favor. The ambitious John Dudley, Earl of Warwick, rose as Somerset's rival. Edward's diary hints at his frustration. "I see the Lord's smiles hide daggers. I am a king by name, but their wills bind me." Though crowned king, Edward's health continued to fail. He endured coughing fits and night sweats, but kept his illness secret from many. His personal physician's notes reveal, "The king's constitution is frail, blood-tinged sputum observed, yet he insists on courtly duties." Edward VI was no ordinary monarch. His youth and frailty masked a sharp mind and fierce determination. But the crown he wore was both a blessing and a siege, a symbol of authority that few truly respected. His diary's final words of this year echo his inner conflict. "A king alone in a sea of power and treachery. May God grant me strength." The throne was his in name, but the true power danced in the hands of others. Edward VI, the boy king, sat quietly as his uncles and advisers wove webs of influence around him. At the heart of the storm stood two men, Edward Seymour, Duke of Somerset, the ambitious Lord Protector, and his rival John Dudley, Earl of Warwick, soon to become Duke of Northumberland. Somerset had begun as Edward's protector, the king's uncle and guardian. But power quickly intoxicated him. He controlled the Privy Council and made sweeping reforms, but critics whispered, "Somerset governs as if the kingdom were his own." His military campaigns, especially the disastrous war with Scotland, drained England's treasury. Despite the boy king's growing pleas for mercy and wisdom, Somerset pushed forward. Though a child, Edward was far from ignorant. In secret diary entries he expressed his frustration and fear. "They crown me king, yet I am but a shadow behind their will. My body weakens, and my voice is unheard." He resented Somerset's arrogance, but dared not oppose him openly. John Dudley, Earl of Warwick, saw Somerset's failings and plotted his fall. A master strategist, Dudley gained support among the nobles and the king's council. His influence over Edward grew as he promised stability and peace. The Tudor court was a minefield of secrets, lies, and betrayals. Edward watched as Somerset's power waned and Dudley's rose. In private moments, he questioned who truly ruled. Is there room for a boy king between these giants? Or am I forever their puppet? Physically fragile, Edward endured endless court sessions, meetings, and political scheming. His cough worsened, his nights restless. Yet he maintained a keen mind, learning statecraft and theology by candlelight. In 1549, a rebellion erupted, partly fueled by Somerset's heavy-handed policies. John Dudley seized the mob and to overthrow Somerset. Somerset was imprisoned, stripped of titles, and later executed. Though only 12, Edward understood the peril. He reluctantly accepted Dudley's dominance but remained cautious. In his diary, he wrote, "I must trust wisely, for my kingdom's fate rests on these men's honor." The boy king's health continued to decline. Emotional wounds deepened as those he once trusted fell from grace. Yet Edward showed glimpses of resolve and courage beyond his years. Edward VI's reign was a tragedy of youth caught between towering ambition and ruthless politics. Though crowned king, he often ruled in shadow, a silent witness to the battles that shaped his realm. His legacy would be forever tied to the men who ruled through him. England was at a crossroads. The echoes of the Reformation rattled through its grand cathedrals and humble parish churches alike. Edward VI, barely a boy but wise beyond his years, stood at the heart of this spiritual storm. His reign would be marked by sweeping reforms that would reshape England's faith forever. From an early age, Edward was tutored not only in languages and statecraft, but deeply steeped in Protestant theology. His tutors, including Archbishop Thomas Cranmer and Bishop Nicholas Ridley, taught him Scripture, Lutheran ideas, and the writings of reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin. Edward absorbed these lessons eagerly, often debating fiercely in private study sessions. In a rare letter, Cranmer wrote, "His Majesty's zeal for true doctrine is unmatched in one so young." One of Edward's most enduring legacies was his support for the Book of Common Prayer, a text that unified English worship and distanced the Church of England from Roman Catholic rituals. Though the young king was too frail to attend all the council meetings, he personally approved its final draft. His private diary reveals, "I pray this book brings light to the people's souls, away from superstition and towards true faith." Despite his public support for Protestant reforms, Edward wrestled with spiritual doubts. In hidden pages of his diary, he recorded secret Latin prayers reflecting his internal conflict. "Lord, my heart wavers as the world shifts beneath me. Guide me to truth beyond man's sight." He sometimes found comfort in the quiet ritual of the Mass, torn between old traditions and new doctrines. Under Edward's reign, the dissolution of monasteries accelerated. Once great abbeys were dismantled, their lands sold to nobles. This caused unrest among common folk who relied on monasteries for charity and sanctuary. Edward's diaries show his awareness of the turmoil. "The poor suffer as the mighty gain. I fear my reforms may bring pain as well as light." Religious reforms faced fierce resistance from Catholic sympathizers within England's nobility and clergy. Plots to restore Catholicism brewed quietly. Edward's council kept a wary eye on dissenters, and some were imprisoned or executed. The young king's diary hints at growing paranoia. Enemies lurk in shadowed halls, speaking false prayers and plotting our ruin. Away from court, Edward kept a strict personal routine of prayer and study. He rose early to read Scripture in multiple languages and often fasted. His chaplain, Hugh Latimer, noted, "Though a child, Edward's devotion was deep and sincere beyond many elders." Bearing the mantle of England's religious transformation weighed heavily on Edward. His physical health deteriorated alongside the strain of leadership. Yet he maintained courage and conviction. His diary poignantly states, "Though my body fails, my spirit stands firm in God's grace." Edward VI's reign was short, but his religious reforms set England on a new course. A boy king shaped by faith, duty, and doubt, he remains a poignant symbol of youthful struggle against the tides of history. By what? 553. Edward VI was a shadow of his former self. The relentless cough, the fevers, and the night sweats had taken a toll no medicine could heal. His frail body lay in the royal chambers of Whitehall Palace, wrapped in fine silks, but unable to escape the creeping shadow of death. In hidden pages of his private diary, Edward poured out his fears and hopes. I feel the cold creeping into my bones, yet my heart clings to hope, though the oars grow short. May God forgive my sins and guide my kingdom after I am gone. These intimate words revealed the deep spiritual struggle of a boy burdened with kingship and mortality. Edward's impending death sparked a fierce struggle for the throne. He knew his half-sisters, Mary and Elizabeth, had competing claims. Fearing the return of Catholicism under Mary, Edward sought to alter the line of succession. In a secret document known as the Devise for the Succession, Edward named his cousin Lady Jane Grey as his heir, bypassing his half-sisters. This decision shocked the realm and sowed seeds of conflict. His diary hints at his anguish. I choose Lady Jane, not for ambition, but to preserve the faith I hold dear. Despite weakness, Edward met with trusted advisers and wrote letters urging loyalty to Jane Grey. He spoke privately with his chaplain Hugh Latimer, confessing fears but affirming faith. On July 6, 1553, Edward VI passed away. Legend says he whispered, "Lord, into thy hands I commend my spirit." His body was prepared for burial with Tudor ceremony, but remained fragile evidence of a life cut short. Centuries later, when his tomb was opened, historians found his coffin badly decayed and his remains fragile, a testament to his delicate health even in death. Lady Jane Grey's brief reign followed, plunging England into turmoil. Edward's reign, though short and overshadowed, permanently shifted England's religious and political landscape. His final struggles reveal the tragic cost of youth burdened by power. Edward VI's story is one of brilliance shadowed by frailty, faith tested by fear, and a kingdom forever changed by a boy who bore a crown too heavy for his shoulders. The moment Edward VI's breath faded, a new drama erupted. Lady Jane Grey, a young noblewoman barely 16, was thrust onto the English throne. Her claim was based on Edward's last will, the Devise for the Succession, designed to keep England Protestant and out of Mary's Catholic grasp. Jane was crowned quickly in a grand but tense ceremony. Though graceful and educated, her youth and the suddenness of her rise left many nobles uneasy. England was divided. Mary Tudor, Edward's older half-sister, gathered supporters, including powerful Catholic nobles and the common people, who rallied for her rightful claim. The Tudor court fractured into bitter factions. Despite her regal appearance, Jane was deeply conflicted. In her personal letters, she expressed fear and uncertainty. I wear this crown as a weight I never sought, my heart heavy with doubts and prayers. Mary's army marched swiftly toward London. Supporters cheered her arrival. Jane's hold on power began to crumble. After just 9 days, Jane was deposed. She was imprisoned in the Tower of London, her fate hanging by a thread. Mary's accession meant a return to Catholicism, harsh persecution of Protestants, and political upheaval. The dream Edward and Jane had fought for flickered out, but the seeds of reform had taken root. Lady Jane Grey's 9 days on the throne symbolized the precariousness of power, especially for youth caught in the tide of history. Her tragic story echoes the painful legacies of Edward VI's reign. With Lady Jane Grey's fall, Mary Tudor was crowned Queen of England. Known as Mary Worth, her reign marked a determined reversal of her half-brother Edward VI's Protestant reforms. Mary's deep Catholic faith guided her policies. She sought to restore the authority of the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church over England. Her personal letters reveal a queen torn between mercy and vengeance. "I desire peace for my people, but I will not yield to heresy." Mary's government initiated harsh laws against Protestants. Clergy who refused to recant were imprisoned, exiled, or burned at the stake. This period became known as the Marian persecutions. Among the most famous victims were Bishops Hugh Latimer and Nicholas Ridley, Edward VI's former tutors. Their fiery deaths became symbols of Protestant resistance. Despite her religious fervor, Mary faced political unrest, including rebellions and foreign threats. Her marriage to Philip II of Spain was unpopular and controversial. Mary struggled between her desire for a peaceful reign and the violent means used to enforce religious unity. Her personal diary, though limited, hints at sorrow and determination. Mary's reign was short but impactful, deepening religious divisions. Her persecution of Protestants fueled future resistance and shaped England's tumultuous religious history. Mary I's reign stands as a somber chapter in Tudor history, a time of faith tested by fire and a kingdom torn by conviction. In 1558, after Mary I's death, her half-sister Elizabeth ascended the throne. At just 25 years old, Elizabeth inherited a kingdom divided by years of religious and political upheaval. Her coronation at Westminster Abbey was filled with hope. Crowds lined the streets, cheering for the daughter of Henry VIII, and Anne Boleyn. Elizabeth faced enormous challenges. England was financially strained. The threat of Catholic rebellion lingered. Foreign powers watched, waiting to pounce on a vulnerable queen. But Elizabeth was prepared. Her education under tutors like Roger Ascham gave her command over languages, philosophy, theology, and statecraft. Elizabeth's greatest achievement early in her reign was the Elizabethan religious settlement, 1559. This restored the Church of England's independence from Rome while avoiding extremes. She declared, "I will not make windows into men's souls," meaning public conformity mattered more than private belief. Elizabeth reinstated many of Edward VI's reforms, including the Book of Common Prayer with modifications, English liturgy instead of Latin, royal supremacy over the Church. Yet she avoided aggressively persecuting Catholics as Mary had persecuted Protestants, unless rebellion threatened her crown. Elizabeth's reign was threatened by Catholic plots supported by Spain and the Pope, the claim of Mary, Queen of Scots, to the English throne. Her secret spy network under Francis Walsingham uncovered many assassination conspiracies. Nobles pressured Elizabeth to marry to secure the Tudor line. But she famously declared, "I am married to England." Her refusal to marry became part of her mythos as the Virgin Queen, a ruler solely devoted to her realm. Under Elizabeth I, England flourished culturally, Shakespeare's plays graced London stages, exploration expanded under men like Sir Francis Drake, art and literature, creating the Elizabethan Golden Age. Elizabeth's early reign restored Protestant stability, balanced religious tensions, and revived national pride after years of turmoil under Edward VI and Mary Worth. Her wisdom, caution, and charisma turned a vulnerable kingdom into a powerful realm, forever earning her the title Glorian, the Virgin Queen who saved England. As the sun set on 6 July 1553, England lost its child king. Edward VI was buried in Henry VII's Lady Chapel at Westminster Abbey, under a plain black marble slab, his body hidden below the grandeur of his ancestors. Few wept publicly. The court moved on swiftly to crown Lady Jane Grey and then Mary Wise. But Edward's short reign left behind deep and lasting shadows. Though Edward ruled only 6 years, his religious reforms forever changed England. The Book of Common Prayer reshaped English worship. Churches were stripped of Catholic icons. The belief that a monarch could dictate religious truth became cemented in the English psyche. Mary reversed many of Edward's policies, restoring Catholicism with harsh persecution. She saw her brother's reforms as heresy and his death as God's judgment upon a Protestant boy king. Yet her burnings of Protestants ignited resistance rather than loyalty. Elizabeth I, Edward's half-sister, restored Protestantism after Mary's death, but tempered it with political pragmatism. She avoided Edward's theological extremism. Her religious settlement was designed not for purity, but for stability. History remembers Edward VI in fragments. The angelic child king who died too soon, the cold reformer with no mercy for Catholics, the lonely scholar lost in scripture and fear, the puppet king ruled by Somerset and Northumberland, the boy with a mission, believing he was chosen to cleanse England. Edward's reign proved that religious transformation could be implemented from the throne downward. His cold resolve and intellectual faith became the model for future English Protestant monarchs. But his failure to unite his realm under one faith left England deeply divided for generations. In his diary, Edward once wrote, "What is a king but a mortal in God's hand, crowned to do his work, yet made of dust and fear?" This one line reveals his deepest truth. He was not merely a boy king or a reformer, but a child trapped in a role too large for his tender years. With Elizabethan's death in 1603, the Tudor dynasty ended. No heirs remained. The crown passed to James VI of Scotland, beginning the Stuart era. But the Tudors left behind a transformed England, a nation reborn from medieval to modern, stories of kings and queens who lived in glory, betrayal, faith, and blood. Today, tourists walk across Edward VI's grave in Westminster Abbey, rarely pausing to read his name. But beneath their footsteps lies the boy who dreamed of purifying a kingdom and instead left it torn between heaven and earth. Edward VI's life teaches, a crown cannot carry a child to manhood. It only buries his innocence in duty. His reign was a flicker, brief, bright, and haunting. The Tudors ended, but their shadows remain in every English church, prayer, and silent stone grave.